What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to another Too Good for Theaters video here. Today we're going to be talking about some recent additions that the Philadelphia 76ers made at the guard position, so let's get right into it. So starting off this video here, the Sixers were able to bring back veteran guard Kyle Lowry on a league minimum deal here, and that's very good value for a league minimum. Kyle Lowry is still a very productive player, and he showed that throughout the regular season last season, as well as in the playoffs, even though I do feel like the Sixers were kind of asking him to do a little too much. That's why I felt like he did struggle at times during the playoffs. But Kyle Lowry's still a very productive player, and just the leadership and familiarity with Nick Nurse that he provides for this team, I feel like is going to very much help him. But also, his role on this team is kind of something that they don't have, in that being that true traditional point guard. And more so just getting the team in the sets, slowing it down, moving the ball around, and really kind of being that field general of this offense that Tyrese Maxey is developing at. And I'm excited to kind of see him grow in that area, because everything that we've asked him to do so far, he has done a real nice job of improving in. And I'm excited to see if he can develop more so into that better playmaker role that he's going to need to be. But Kyle Lowry is that guy right now for the Sixers. He's probably the best playmaker on this team in terms of creating for others, whether that's passing the ball or just understanding defenses and getting the team into the proper sets to have proper offense ran. But I wonder what Kyle Lowry's role is going to be on this team, because I could even see Kyle Lowry being a starter on this team once more, just based on that tool set, especially with the offensive players around him. One thing for the ideal quote-unquote starting five that the Sixers have, with that being Tyrese Maxey, Kelly Oubre, Paul George, Caleb Martin, and Joel Embiid, there's not that necessarily traditional playmaker that I was saying earlier. And Kyle Lowry could provide that. By saying that he's a starter, I'm not saying give him starter minutes. I would say more so keep him around that 20-minute to 15-minute range. But if he can play with that unit and kind of open up games with that unit, it's certainly going to help those players around him, I feel, more so because he is that guy who's going to be able to get them the ball in spots that they necessarily need to have, that none of them really can do by themselves. They're not all necessarily great passers. You might honestly argue that Joel Embiid is probably the best playmaker for others of those five that I listed. And Kyle Lowry, if he is starting, I feel like provides that kind of playmaking role that could very much help benefit the starters of this team, especially the three stars, with that being Tyrese Maxey, Paul George, and Joel Embiid. So I'm interested to see if Kyle Lowry might even start a little bit, but if not, I feel like he's going to be that conductor for the second unit, being one of the two guards off the bench who might come up and kind of lead that second unit. Obviously, you're going to have a solid pick and roll threat with Andre Drummond if you are Kyle Lowry. And Kyle Lowry can still get himself a bucket. I feel like it is more so based off of others, with that having to be in a pick and roll set or probably off ball, like a catch and shoot three, or attacking a weak closeout. He's not necessarily going to create his own shot anymore. And he certainly does a better job of creating for others than himself at this point in his career. But just getting Kyle Lowry back here, I'm really interested to see if he does start at all. But if not, I mean, he brings something that this team really doesn't have, which is a playmaking guard. So I think a very good addition here by the Sixers front office. And hopefully Nick Nurse just continues to have Kyle Lowry kind of be that steady rock that he has been throughout his career. So the Sixers were also able to pick up recently waived guard by the Charlotte Hornets, Reggie Jackson, on what I project is a league minimum deal, which is incredible value for Reggie Jackson. The contract details haven't necessarily come out yet, but given the Sixers cap situation, that's what I project it to be based off, obviously, their financial situations. But Reggie Jackson, like Kyle Lowry, really has a unique skill set for this team that I feel like only him and Tyrese Maxey have. And obviously Tyrese Maxey is going to display the skill set way more than Reggie Jackson. But I feel like Reggie Jackson probably has the best blend of creating for himself as well as being a playmaking guard coming off the bench in terms of just basically the guard depth that this team has. Obviously, Tyrese Maxey is in a different league of his own in that standard, but I'm talking from more so the projected guard depth off the bench between like Kyle Lowry, Jared McCain, Jeff Dowling, Eric Gordon. I feel like Reggie Jackson kind of has that skill set to not only create that self for himself or create the shot for himself, but as well as others. He's definitely the best shot creator off the bench right now for the Sixers, projecting basically who's off the bench. In terms from the guard standpoint, he can certainly create his own shot the best. Like I said before, Kyle Lowry is probably the best traditional playmaker, but Reggie Jackson is able to kind of create for others as well because of the threat, his offensive threat of himself. So I'm excited to see this, more so because the Sixers really haven't had a guard like this coming off their bench probably since, like, I would say, like, Shake Milton during the 2020 season when he was, like, running that six-man second unit lineup alongside Tyrese Maxey. But I'm really interested to see what Reggie Jackson provides from this bench standpoint. Unlike Kyle Lowry, I really don't foresee him kind of stepping into that starting unit at all. Just because you can probably get better overall players in that spot than him, and he doesn't really fill that need that the starting lineup is lacking in terms of playmaking. But coming off the bench, I think like Reggie Jackson might actually be one or two, like the first or second most important player off this bench, just because his ability to play on ball as well as off ball and create his own shot. It's going to be interesting to really see who he's playing alongside. Obviously, I said that Kyle Lowry might be starting, but yet again, Kyle Lowry probably isn't part of the best starting five for this team, so Kyle Lowry could very well might be coming off the bench. And kind of having these two guys, that being Reggie Jackson and Kyle Lowry, kind of being that 1-2 guard combo off the bench is very good because they can certainly both play off each other. Like Kyle Lowry is still a very good catch-and-shoot three-point shooter, still effective off ball from a scoring standpoint. And you can say the same thing about Reggie Jackson. Probably not as good of a shooter as Kyle Lowry is, but he can play off ball and still be an offensive threat. But either one of them can kind of control the ball, maintain the second unit, and really run the offense through the second unit. And I'm excited to kind of see how Nick Nurse uses Reggie Jackson just from an offensive standpoint, because I feel like Reggie Jackson is probably the most offensively gifted guard off the bench in terms of three level, in terms of three-point shooting, attacking in the mid-range, and getting into the paint and really driving that the Sixers have had in a while. So I'm just excited to see how Nick Nurse uses Reggie Jackson's skill set, and if Reggie Jackson's skill set is able to correlate with the unit that the Sixers are hoping to project him playing with. Last couple players I wanted to talk about here was guard Jeff Dowling Jr., guard Eric Gordon, as well as guard Jared McCain here. And I feel like of those three, Eric Gordon's probably going to play the most important role this season for the Sixers, just because of the threat of his shooting ability and his ability to space the floor, as well as not being a total defensive liability. I'll get into my explaining of that a little later, but Eric Gordon can certainly guard up. He's stocky, he has a good build. Not saying he's a lockdown defender by any means at this point in his career, but he can still certainly hold his own from that standpoint. Just the gravity that he has as a volume three-point shooter in this league cannot be understated. Especially from the range he is able to pull. It's going to make guys like Tyrese Maxey, Paul George, and Joel Embiid's life so much easier with Eric Gordon on the floor. And that's why I kind of foresee Eric Gordon kind of maybe even being in that Kyle Lowry territory of being that fifth starter, just because of the gravity of his spacing and his shooting threat playing alongside guys like Embiid, PG, and Tyrese. Because not only is he going to make their lives easier, they're going to make his life easier because of all the amount of open threes that he's able to really connect on. Because these guys, I mean, they're going to draw all the attention from defenses. And when you have a guy like Eric Gordon on the wing who's going to consistently hit wide open catching through threes, you're going to have to pay attention to that. And the gravity that really Eric Gordon brings is just going to help the others so much. So that's why I could foresee him potentially being in the starting lineup. Most likely he's not going to be, but I can certainly see him being one of the first three off the bench for this unit just because of his shooting ability and with him not being a total liability on the defensive end. And I could see him quickly becoming one of Nick Nurse's favorite guys to go to just because of his offensive spacing and really his shooting ability in general. But moving on next to the guy like Jared McCain, I think a very similar skill set to a guy like Eric Gordon. Maybe not size-wise, but just the shooting threat that he is. I know he didn't shoot the ball tremendously in Summer League, but I'm not worried about his shot making at all in this league. And I do feel like he does show the ability sometimes to kind of play on ball compared to whereas Duke, he was just strictly off ball because of the guards around him. That might honestly be the case for his time with the Sixers, having guys like Kyle Lowry and Reggie Jackson more likely to have the ball in their hands if they all are playing in this second unit. But I can very much see Jared McCain's role kind of being similar to Eric Gordon, being that off-ball threat. I do see more movement shooting off of Jared McCain than Eric Gordon, but either way, either catching 2 threes or like movement shooting, cutting, I see really Jared McCain getting the majority of his production scoring-wise off-ball. And I will give Jared McCain credit. He is a solid defender for his size. I just think that because of his size, he's going to be limited on the defensive end. There's going to be times where he's getting abused, which is why you might not see him as much as Eric Gordon this season. Obviously, long-term wise, I would hope that Jared McCain has more of an impact than Eric Gordon does. No disrespect to Eric Gordon, but whenever you take a guy in the first round, you'd like to see him last multiple seasons with your franchise. But that's why I more so kind of see Jared McCain's role being. He's not necessarily going to be given any minutes here regularly. I wouldn't be surprised if he's a guy who potentially only plays like 20 games this season and averages around like 10 minutes a game. But that's just more so not due to his skill set, just because of the depth in front of him, I would say. So hopefully you can see Jared McCain get some time this season and continue to kind of really advance as a ball handler. I feel like that's really going to help him continue to grow if he becomes more of a threat with the ball in his hands. I think he did show times at the Summer League this season of advancing in that kind of skill set. So hopefully he can continue to develop in that area and potentially be a guy like you might turn to being your sixth man either next season or the season after that. So hopefully Jared McCain is able to kind of obtain that ability, and that'd be a great sign for him. But lastly here, I wanted to talk about Jeff Dowtin Jr. Had a very good Summer League, I would say. The only issue really with Jeff Dowtin that I have right now, and luckily he's on a two-way, so he's going to be able to be compatible with the G League. He doesn't necessarily have that one defining skill. He's just more so a solid overall player for you in that guard position. But there's everyone on this roster from a guard standpoint does something better than Jeff Dowtin, and that's his one issue. He might not be the worst overall guard on the team, but he doesn't specialize in anything, which is why I could see his playing time really. It's going to be a struggle for him to kind of carve out playing time for himself. Obviously, he showed glimpses last season, and I feel like he did a real nice job in his playing time, kind of just playing alongside guys like Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid, and kind of getting the NBA system. He's one of Nick Nurse's favorites. He brought him over from Toronto, and they have been together for a while now. But if he is going to be able to carve himself out a role, I feel like he is going to have to specialize in something, or there's going to have to be a lot of injuries for which Jeff Dowtin might actually be able to see some playing time. Unless they go like a 3-guard rotation in the back or in the second unit. But even then, you're going to have guys like Eric Gordon, Kyle Lowry, and Reggie Jackson in front of him, and even maybe Jared McCain in front of him. So it's going to be really difficult for Jeff Dowtin to kind of carve out a role for himself. I hope he does. I like Jeff Dowtin. I think his skill set is valuable to an NBA team, kind of just bringing that overall, like a solid NBA player who really doesn't have a lot of true deficiencies. But he is going to have to get better in one specific area for him to really kind of gain any traction and getting any kind of consistent playing time here. All right, everyone. Those were kind of my takes on the Sixers guard depth. Real nice job by the Sixers front office just to kind of get as many bodies as they can, and really capable bodies here for the Sixers to kind of throw at teams. I'm excited to see what Nick Nurse kind of does in terms of rotations. And if you have any thoughts, let me know in the comments below of how you see this kind of guard depth playing out throughout the season. And once again, thank you so much again for watching. as the channel continues to grow, your support means the world. So thank you so much.